Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear is nothing short of the most shocking roster in Dodgers history. A move so unexpected, so emotional, so deeply tied to the very heart of this team that even Shohei Ohtani himself could not hide his reaction. In the past few days, the Dodgers, the reigning champions, have launched an aggressive campaign to rebuild for a historic three-peat. No one, absolutely no one, imagined the front office would pull the trigger on a trade of magnitude. A single move that shook the clubhouse, left players speechless, and forced an emergency full-team meeting that changed the energy inside Dodger Stadium overnight. A move that saw Teoscar Hernandez's locker emptied in silence, and in its place, the No. 27 jersey of a generational superstar now shining under the lights. Yes, this is the shocking truth behind the one-for-one trade that stuck the entire MLB. Why did the Dodgers sacrifice one of their emotional pillars? Friedman to make one of the boldest trades of the decade. And why did Ohtani walk out of the meeting with a look no one had ever seen before? Today, we break it all down. The strategy, the politics, the emotions, the future of the Dodgers dynasty. This is the real story behind Teoscar's departure and Mike Trout's unbelievable arrival. Now, let's get into the full details. The Dodgers are aiming for a third consecutive championship, and to that end, they're aggressively strengthening their team and rebuilding it. Their defense is a notorious weakness, and last season, Gaia's defensive prowess determined the outcome of many games. As a result, immediately after the World Series ended, the Dodgers announced a major shakeup of their defense and recently executed an unprecedented trade that's said to remain a fixture in the team's history. Specifically, the Dodgers traded Teoscar in a one-for-one trade to acquire Mike Trout. Teoscar officially signed a DHK contract with the Angels, and Ohtani's locker in the newly renovated 27 TR was placed next to Ohtani's. Immediately after hearing this news, Ohtani's shocking behavior surprised the entire Dodgers. Friedman's sudden announcement sparked a general uproar among the Dodgers' internal chatter. Everyone was preparing for an emergency meeting to discuss an extremely important matter directly related to team formation. That single moment alone shook the entire team. Players began visiting each other one after another. What happened? Does anyone know? Friedman emphasized that this was an expanded meeting with everyone, and that important decisions might be made after opinions had been heard. His words ratcheted up tensions, with some expecting a tactical shift and others fearing cuts in the wake of recent upheaval. Within 30 minutes of notice, everyone was gathered in the clubhouse. The room was packed but silent, the only sounds being the clanging of chairs and the players' fresh breaths. Letts looked around. Freeman waited with his arms crossed, and the rookies looked uneasy. Everyone understood that this was no ordinary gathering, but one that could influence the direction of the Dodgers. The first topic Friedman brought up was the future of Hajime, and the room instantly fell silent. He placed the documents on the table and spoke thoughtfully. At this point, the front office was torn between two options, whether to re-sign Hajime. He explained that the biggest obstacle was Hajime's injury situation. He's just come out of surgery, and his recovery is not guaranteed, Friedman stated frankly. It's unclear at this point whether he'll be strong enough to contribute throughout a long season. Re-signing him with his health in such an uncertain state carries significant risks from a financial, strategic, and player depth perspective. The Dodgers avoided making any hasty decisions and said they would wait until the medical staff reports and assess his recovery over the next few weeks. Friedman asserted that the medical team's final decision on whether he remains in danger remains. The clubhouse was silent. Kay is not just a player, he's also Locker's emotional support. Once the agenda was finished, Friedman suddenly took out a document and distributed it to everyone. The atmosphere changed completely. As the players opened the first page, their eyes froze, and shocking words caught their eyes. Notice, Teoscar Hernandez Dodgers interview. Friedman stood up and announced in a clear voice that he would read the entire document aloud so everyone could understand. The clubhouse was so quiet
that even the sound of hair being flipped could be heard.
The report clearly stated that Teoscar was no longer part of the long-term strategy. But the most shocking part was the internal evaluation, which stated that Teoscar's Gaia performance had declined to a dangerous level and that there were serious issues with his application to fresh techniques. The report even went so far as to point out that keeping him would sacrifice tactical flexibility and the years needed for more important reinforcements, and Friedman concluded by saying that we needed to look to the future. No one spoke. Some looked down, others sighed. The Teoscar talks had been officially confirmed, and their impact was greater than expected. But the real impact was yet to come. As the players whispered about the Teoscar incident, Friedman stopped, took a deep breath, and instructed everyone to turn to the next page. The sound of pages being turned echoed throughout the conference room, and it froze. It read, written in Taiji, the one-for-one trade between Teoscar and Mike Trout was met with such excitement that some players dropped the documents. Ohtani's eyes were wide, and Gomez put his hand to his forehead. The idea of Teoscar being in a one-for-one trade with Trout, the superstar of a generation, was shocking enough, but the fact that it was a one-for-one trade with Trout, the superstar of a generation, was beyond imagination. Friedman looked around at the anxious faces of the team and spoke slowly. This is the reason we were letting Teoscar go. These negotiations had been carried out for a long time and at great expense. A price had to be paid to acquire Trout. No one spoke, and everyone was in indescribable shock. Losing Teoscar was painful enough, but when they learned that the price was Mike Trout, no one knew whether to be happy or sad. Friedman looked around the room in breathtaking silence and began to recount the entire negotiation process. It all started the moment Mike Trout officially became available for trading. As soon as the news was released, the Dodgers moved quickly. Friedman said this opportunity comes around once every few years. Dodgers executives, convinced that they had no choice but to act immediately if they wanted Trout, sent an initial proposal to enter into blockbuster trade negotiations. However, as they entered the crucial negotiation stage of determining the factors for the trade, the Angels made a request that surprised the Dodgers, Teoscar Fernandez. Friedman began to explain why the Angels and owner Arte Moreno in particular were so interested. Moreno had long admired Teoscar's hard-hitting style, powerful swing, game-changing explosiveness, and all-out playing style. Trout and Moreno, the Angels were building a destructive team called Gaia, and Teoscar was an ideal fit for the team structure they were currently building. Furthermore, Moreno believed Teoscar could rekindle the power-hitting spirit of the team. Moreno envisioned Teoscar as a pillar of Gaia, paired with two young players he was developing. Friedman said Moreno saw in Teoscar the elements they now write about. He explained that he believed he would explode in his new environment. As a result, the trade was finalized as a one-for-one exchange of Teoscar for Mike Trout. The conference room was silent, and everyone was stunned by the news of the trade, understanding the weight of the price to pay, along with the shock. Ohtani remained silent in the center seat. He couldn't hide the confusion on his face. The Teoscar interview, the questioning, and the trade with Trout had brought him an unprecedented sense of conflict. He stared at the desk, his fingers crossed, and didn't say a word. A few minutes later, Ohtani quietly stood up and asked permission to leave the conference room. The room fell silent as Ohtani's shoulders slumped and he walked down the hallway with heavier steps than usual. He was clearly not his usual calm and strong self today. Friedman quickly followed him and whispered, "Are you okay?" Ohtani stopped for a moment, but answered briefly and in a low voice without looking back. "I respect the front office's decision." Without saying anything more, Oda continued walking. Only an oppressive silence remained behind him. No matter how hard he tried to hide his sadness that losing a close teammate, it was impossible. When the players returned to the clubhouse after the meeting, the atmosphere had changed completely, and everyone could feel the weight of the situation. In the row of team lockers, a quiet blank remained where Teoscar Hernandez's name tag had once been. His locker had been completely cleared out, his gloves, uniform, and his usual towel gone. Not a trace remained, as if he had never existed in the first place. Next to it, a Dodgers blue uniform, to which a staff member had attached a new tag, Mike Trout 27, shone in the locker room lights, hanging as it had when he was alive. It was a new beginning, but at the same time, it quietly signaled the end of something, and all the Warriors passing by were speechless. There still seemed to be warmth in the place where Teoscar had left behind, but he was no longer there. The Teoscar Trout trade and Ohtani's silent shock, what this really means for the Dodgers. When we step back from the emotion of the moment and look at the Dodgers' blockbuster move through a purely objective lens, one thing becomes clear. This is not just a trade. It is a statement about the Dodgers' identity, their future, and their willingness to take unprecedented risks for a three-peat. Teoscar Hernandez was never merely a bat in the lineup. He was a presence, loud, emotional, streaky, explosive, someone who could change the energy of a clubhouse with a single swing. For many players, especially Ohtani, he represented stability, camaraderie, and shared battle scars. But the numbers don't lie. His declining defensive metrics, reduced range, misjudged balls, and inconsistent play in high-pressure moments painted a painful picture. The Teoscar of 2024 was not the same Teoscar of 2022. And in a franchise as ruthlessly perfection-driven as the Dodgers, sentimentality can never outweigh performance. From Friedman's perspective, the decision is almost cold in its clarity. If you want to win a third straight title in a sport defined by razor-thin margins, every weakness, especially in the outfield, becomes a crack in your championship armor. And then comes the second shockwave, Mike Trout, a player whose name alone reshapes the gravitational pull of an entire roster. On paper, Trout's offensive upside is still higher than Teoscar's ceiling ever was. Even a diminished Trout offers elite discipline, leadership, and postseason experience. His presence beside Ohtani, Freeman, Betts, and Smith creates a lineup that is almost unfair. But emotionally, this trade hits differently. Teoscar's interview, the empty locker, the stunned silence, these elements reveal the human cost of the move. Players are not robots. They form bonds, alliances, memories. And when one of their own is moved, especially someone as beloved as Teoscar, it shakes the entire room. Which brings us to Ohtani, his silence, his absence of the usual composed smile, his decision to quietly step out of the meeting. These reactions reveal a side of Shohei we rarely see, the emotional core of a leader who must now carry the weight of both loss and expectation. Even for someone as mentally disciplined as Ohtani, watching a close teammate leave, particularly in exchange for Trout, with whom he has a complex past, creates an impossible mix of respect, nostalgia, and pressure. And that, in many ways, is the heart of this moment. The Dodgers did not just trade a player, they traded comfort for ambition, stability for potential, and present harmony for future dominance. Some will call it genius, some will call it ruthless. Both are true. But in baseball, especially at the level the Dodgers play, champions are not made by fear of change. They are made by embracing it. Whether this move becomes the spark for a legendary three-peat or the origin of new internal fractures, one thing is undeniable. This trade will be remembered as one of the defining moments of the Dodgers' modern dynasty. A moment when the front office bet everything on the belief that greatness requires sacrifice. And now, all eyes turn to the field, where this bold gamble must prove itself one pitch at a time. As the dust settles and the Dodgers step into a new era, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The story is far from over. The departure of Teoscar, the arrival of Trout, Ohtani's silent heartbreak, and the front office's ruthless pursuit of a three-peat have all set the stage for one of the most dramatic seasons in modern baseball history. Every decision from this point forward, every lineup change, every locker room reaction, every moment Trout steps on the field in Dodger blue,
will carry the weight of everything we witnessed today.
And that is exactly why you'll want to stay with us.
Because the next chapter will be even more unpredictable, more emotional, and more revealing than anything the Dodgers have shown so far. Will Trout and Ohtani revive their legendary connection or clash under the pressure? Will the team rise stronger from this seismic shift or fracture under the emotional cost? One thing is certain. The Dodgers' journey has entered uncharted territory, and we'll be here to uncover every twist, every truth, and every shock before the rest of the world sees it.